Hello everyone, welcome back. I want to talk a little bit more about gold and silver as a potential fallback currency for Armageddon. Okay, so I talked about in an earlier video where there's like two levels, right? One is where we're the current like recession, depression era that we're going into, which has been created by the government, printing money, right? Electronically printing money. The money printing, right? The more money you print, the less valuable it is through dilution, right? And the fix to that is a recession, right? Federal Reserve's already on it. I mean, it took them long, basically the longer you wait, the more drastic the fix has to be. At this point, the Federal Reserve has started really raising the interest rates pretty quickly, right? They're at the point where, okay, listen, we can't hold off anymore for political reasons. We got to get inflation under control. So they're already in the process of fixing the inflation by causing a recession, which I think is going to end up being a depression, just because they let it get that far away from them that the fix is going to be really it's going to be really hard. So if you have a little bit of inflation, you can have a little bit of a recession. If you have a lot of inflation, right, if you let it get away from you, you need like a very deep recession, almost depression, okay? So that's where we're at, and I already explained in the last video that the US dollar, okay, is the most powerful weapon of the United States, okay? After World War II, they intentionally made sure that almost the entire world is running on US dollars so that they can influence the whole world. They've achieved that. That the U.S. dollar, okay, is more powerful than the aircraft carriers or the nuclear missiles. So that's their number one weapon, the U.S. dollar. That's how they control the world. They're going to protect this weapon that they have at all costs. Okay, so if they need to make you lose your job and make you lose your house so that they can protect the weapon, they will. Okay, so let's understand what the U.S. dollar is and how the U.S. government uses it. And once you understand that it's a powerful weapon, you'll understand why they're going to protect the dollar at all costs. Okay, so we discussed that we discussed that in the last video. What I want to talk about in this video is let's talk about the worldwide government collapses. Right? Let's say we have a super volcano or a meteor, supermassive meteor falls on the Earth, where the U.S. dollar starts collapsing. Or basically just has no value, right? Paper money has no value. Would gold and silver be a valuable currency, right, or commodity for trading purposes in that situation? So the thing to understand with something like that is that if you had a global catastrophe where governments started collapsing, okay, and like I say, it could be natural disaster, it could be an invasion, right? You could have like just World War IV, right? Or you could have just civil wars breaking out all over the world. All these things that would cause governments to collapse. Would gold and silver be of any value? Well, here's the thing to understand, that there's so many people on this planet, okay, that we depend on industrialized food production, okay? You can't just have a family farm sustaining itself anymore. I mean, it's just, for one thing, family farms don't, you can't, I mean, a family farm is not self-sufficient, okay? Back in the 1940s, the place where my family is from in Europe, right? There was a war going on in Europe. It was not in the immediate town where my family is from, right? And you know what? It didn't affect them, okay? It doesn't matter that planes were flying overhead, dropping bombs, 100 miles away. The fact that it was not affecting them, they were still doing their farming activities. They had their own farm animals to plow and do that stuff. So the village was completely self-sufficient, okay? So it didn't matter if there was a war even 50 miles away, okay? As long as it didn't get to their town, they just went about their business. They grew their food. They were able to live off it, right? That same town, right, is not self-sufficient today because people don't plow with farm animals, right? They don't even have, even the tools that they use are tractor driven, right? They don't, like, even if they had horses, they don't have anything that will hook up to the horse. Okay, so it's not just a matter of having a horse. You got to have the tools that will match up to the horse. It's like a farming system almost. Okay, so same village today. Okay, if you had that same scenario where you had a war, those same people would starve just as fast as the people in the cities, because they cannot farm without diesel. Okay, they need electricity to run a lot of the tools that they run. Okay, right now we are all dependent on industrialized farming. So if you had a situation where governments around the world started collapsing, okay, the situation that you would have is that the industrialized farming would come to an end. I do small family farming, right? I have a little hobby farm myself, and let me tell you guys, it's really hard to grow enough food to sustain yourself. Okay, there's a lot of things that gotta be in place. It's not as easy as take a shovel, dig a hole, plant some seeds, and you get enough food. First of all, you gotta have enough food to last you a whole year. Okay, with an acre of land, maybe I can grow enough food to last me a month or two, but that's about it. In fact, my plan is I grow the corn to feed the chickens, and then the chickens in turn feed me. Okay, so that's kind of the survival plan there. But it's not as easy as you would think it is. Okay, there's a lot of variables that gotta come into play. But in order to do that, I need the tractor working. Right, without the tractor working, without it running on diesel, I'm not going to grow enough food for the chickens to eat. And I'm not going to have chickens to eat. Okay, so we are dependent on industrialized farming. So if anything interrupted that, what would happen is you would have worldwide starvation. Okay, I guarantee you this. As somebody that grows food, okay, you're gonna have worldwide starvation. And if you have worldwide starvation, basically you're gonna have, like, let's say 90% die-off rate, I think. Okay, so if you've got that many people dying off, you know something? The gold and silver is not going to have any value, because there's going to be more gold and silver than you've got people alive. Okay, unlike the medieval ages, right? Through modern day mining techniques, there's lots of gold and silver out there, right? So especially if you have a massive die-off in the population, I don't think that the gold and silver is going to be very valuable at all. Okay, so one of the things quickly for us to understand is, why did gold and silver ever have any value? In ancient times, early ancient times, it was valued because for artistic purposes, because it's easy to work with, right? Which means that it very quickly came into the religious sphere. So people made religious art, religious objects, right? They used gold to adorn that. So it went from purely artistic to now associated with religion. Okay, and at some point, people, specifically rich people, started trading with it. Okay, so a lot of times when we look at a lot of the literature where you see people doing trading in gold and silver, ask yourself, who are these people? Okay, are they the peasants? No, they are the rich people, right? They're always rich people that are doing business in gold and silver. Because for one thing, if you've got gold and silver, you pretty much better have a way to defend it, right? So you better have like a small army behind you, all right? So that's the other thing to understand with gold and silver. But specifically answering the question of why did gold and silver have why did it have this appreciation of value? Okay. Well, same reason that money has value today. The reason why money has value is because the amount of money that people owe always exceeds the amount of money that is available to pay back that debt. Okay, so when the banks create money, right? You go to the bank, you put up an asset, whether it's gold that you mined or a house that you're mortgaging, you put up an asset, the bank creates the principal, they don't create the interest. Okay, so now you got to go out there, run around, and try to find the interest part to pay back to the bank. You're not going to find it unless other people come in after you that also borrow money, where the bank now creates more money. Okay, so now you can do business with those people, get the interest to pay back the bank. Okay, so if the system were so basically the first generation depends on the second generation to come in and create more money, and then the second generation depends on the third generation, and so on. Okay, so the system depends on people continually coming in, so more money is continually being created, so that the interest is being created, so for the prior generation to pay it back. Okay, that's just how the system works. Okay, I can do the same thing with cow shit. I can turn that into valuable money. Okay, let's say I'm the only source of cow shit, right? You need fertilizer, right? You come to me, right? I'm the only source in the world. You ask me to borrow a bag of cow shit. I say, sure. Here's a bag of cow shit. Next week, you gotta give me back 2 bags of cow shit. Okay. The second week comes around, where are you gonna get that second bag of cow shit? Where are you gonna get 2 bags of cow shit from? If I'm the only source in the world, right, in this example in this artificial example here, you're going to come back to me and you're going to ask me to borrow two bags of cow shit so you can pay me back. I'm going to say, sure, I'm going to lend you 2 bags of cow shit. Next week, you got to pay me back 4 bags of cow shit, okay? So next week comes around, shit, where you're going to find 4 bags of cow shit. I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to lend you 4 bags of cow shit. The following week, you got to pay me back 8 bags of cow shit. So the rest of your life, you're going to be working for shit, okay? All right? So that's how that works. Same deal goes with gold, all right? If you want to borrow gold from me, right? And that was a big thing, especially during the Renaissance, right? People would borrow gold from the banks, right? If you want to borrow gold from me, right? Or if you want to borrow gold from somebody else, an example for that would be like a lot of these medieval wars. When these knights would go to war, part of the reason why they would go to war is so that they could capture other knights and ransom them. Okay, so what happens if they didn't have enough gold to get ransomed, they would have to borrow it, right? So same deal with that. If I'm the guy with the gold, you come to me and say, hey, listen, I need to borrow gold from you. Okay, fine. I'm going to lend you 1 piece of gold or 1 bar of gold. Next week, you got to pay me back 2 bars of gold. Okay. Following week, you don't have 2 bars of gold. I'm going to say, fine, I'm going to lend you 2 bars of gold but you got to pay me back 4 bars of gold, okay? Following week, you don't have the 4 bars of gold to pay me back. I'm going to tell you the same thing. I'll lend you the 4 bars of gold to pay me back, but the following week, you got to lend me 8 bars of gold. It keeps going on. It does not matter what the object is, okay? It doesn't matter whether it's paper money, gold, horse shit, doesn't matter. Through interest, okay, I can turn anything into a valuable currency. And that's the reason why money has value, because at any given time, more money is owed, okay, than money exists to pay it back, okay? And many times I have told you guys, our national debt, what is it up to now? Something like $30 trillion? The number trillion is an insane number, okay? 1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years, okay? So the government borrowing $1 trillion, who are they going to borrow $1 trillion from, right? This is an insane number. It doesn't exist unless you're talking about molecules or stars. So this is money that's just electronically being created in a computer. All the money does is it reflects how much money the government is creating. When me and you create money, we're limited as to how much money we can create because we have to put up real assets. The government has to put up, it doesn't put up real assets. The government basically gives itself an IOU. Okay, it just creates this paper, this balance sheet item called debt. Okay, it doesn't matter whether the national debt is $30 trillion or $100 trillion or whatever, a gazillion $trillion. It's not a real number. It's just not a real number. Okay, it is just a balance sheet item where they kind of keep track of how much money they're electronically creating. But there it is. That's the reason why. I just wanted to lay out to you like why gold has any value. I believe that it is also linked to inflation. I'm sorry, not to interest. The value of gold, okay, was also linked to interest because as people borrow gold, they had to pay back that gold plus interest. So there was never enough gold for them to actually pay back. In a shit hit the fan type of situation where you had like a massive die-off around the planet, most likely due to starvation because from not enough food production, right? Because, again, we depend on industrialized food production. If that system breaks down, you can't feed this many people through through family farms, right? You can't feed them. You need industrialized food production. This planet was never meant to sustain this many people. Okay? It's just unnatural. So if you had industrialized food production break down, you would probably have a massive die-off through worldwide starvation. And I don't think gold or silver would help you in that situation, because there's going to be, companies have been mining gold, right, and other metals on a large scale now for over 100 years. Like, we're talking about like large scale industrial mining. So as the world's population dies off, there's tons of gold out there. What are they gonna do with all this gold? So that's why I don't think the gold and the silver would be useful in this scenario, right? In the worldwide government collapse type of situation, because people are going to be dying off at a really fast rate. The people are going to be dying off. The gold and silver is not, right? That's one of the great things about gold and silver. It doesn't rust. So the gold and silver will still be on this planet after the human race has completely died off. It'll still be here, okay? So that's why I'm not a big believer in gold and silver investment. I'm not saying don't have a small bag of coins on the side or something like that, but I don't think... I think that the most valuable thing that you can have, first of all, is money, like just cash money saved up. Cash money saved up, that's liquid, so that you can take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves in the coming recession/depression, depending how deep we go into it. If you got cash money available, you're going to do very well. And if you don't have cash money, the next thing you can have is tools, have a business set up that's recession proof. That's also something that's really valuable. In this type of a situation down here, where you have a worldwide collapse, the most valuable thing that you can have is skills, useful skills. And if we look at let's look at the Holocaust situation, right? When the Germans were rounding up, people for extermination, who were the people that they did not exterminate, right? The ones that had some type of a skill. So as soon as you came into their extermination camps, they kind of did like a triage. Who are you? What type of skills do you have? If you had useful skills, they kept you alive as slave labor. Okay. The last thing I'm going to add is that picking up on what I just said about human slave labor. People don't look at the situation that exists now, right, and think that this is the natural way for things to be. Okay. Human history is, written human history, like even in its most basic forms, is basically 5,000 years of slavery. Okay. Human history is basically 1% of the population, right? The armed part of the population, the governments, the military, the people with the weapons, enslaving the other 99 to 97%. Okay, that's human history. You can expect that anything that disturbs the almost unnatural situation that we have now, okay, will revert us back to the situation that has existed for about 5,000 years. Which is about 97% of the human population being slaves. Okay, and even through the medieval ages, if you were a serf, right, that's a form of slavery. Okay, you were basically tied to the land. The lord, the person that had the land, basically, he could make up any laws that he wanted, including, he could basically just on the spot make up any laws, and if you violated that law, the punishment could be death. Okay, so serfdom, which existed in Europe for between 1000 AD and through, I don't know, maybe 1700 or 1600 AD. Serfdom was a form of slavery. Okay, the only difference was that they could not, the landlord could not legally sell slaves. He couldn't sell the people. Right? He could do whatever he wanted with them, except sell them off. Okay. And the reason, right, kind of going off into a tangent here, the reason why they preferred serfdom to slavery is because in a slave society, slaves are not really good at reproducing. Okay, so in a slave society, what happens is you're essentially working the people to death. The women aren't raising the kids, right? They're not raising, so you're not replenishing that population. A pure slave society depends on continuous war, right? Which was the case with Rome. Rome was a slave-based society that was dependent on continuous war, so more slaves could continue to come into the empire. At the point where that's cut off, then it starts mutating into something else. Basically, it starts becoming a class society, which is what would have happened in the United States had slavery not been ended, right? If it wasn't for the Civil War that ended slavery, I suspect that within 100 years or 200 years, we would have become a class society. And that's specifically something that the Founding Fathers wanted to avoid. They didn't want this to become a class society, which I suspect was part of the reason why they wanted to end slavery before it started mutating into a class society. So anyway, way off on a tangent there. But the point is that human history is 5,000 years of slavery. It's a very delicately balanced system. We're basically one global disaster away from a return to slavery. I'll leave you guys with that. Talk to you all soon.